Hey, welcome back. Let's talk about naans and pizzas. I think two of my all-time favorite types of breads. And I think pizza is loved in this house so much that I'm sure it's said multiple times every single day. I got my naan dough right there. It's the same recipe as my usual naan, and to make this naanza, we'll follow the same recipe except a third of that full recipe yields one medium-sized pizza or naanza. Gotta get that right. So just to recap how to make the naan, I have some flour, milk, yeast, sugar and salt in this KitchenAid mixer, and I'm just gonna mix that until it's a nice and smooth dough. Then just let that rest with some oil in a bowl, and after 2 hours it would have risen. Now just divide that into thirds, roughly between 12 to 13-ounce portions each. It's perfect for a nice medium-sized pizza. And then with each of those portions, what you want to do is kind of fold it into itself. So what I'm doing here is stretching that top part, which is creating tension. So what that's going to do, after I've sealed the back of it and have that nice surface tension, is when this rises, it's going to be perfectly spherical, which is going to make your pizza forming process so much easier. So from the back here, see, I'm just pinching, creating that seal, and then repeating it again and again until that surface is nice and taut. Once you're happy with it, just form it into a ball by just evening out the circle, and your portions are ready to either freeze or to rest for another couple of hours before we can make the pizza. Now just check out what this looks like right now. As you can see, it's wrapped up pretty tightly with some plastic wrap, and that's to prevent any air from drying out that dough. I also have two other portions from this recipe which I have frozen, which is perfect, and you freeze that after you do the initial portioning, after the first 2-hour bulk rise. And when you want to use it, you just take the dough ball out, let that defrost, and preferably let it rise overnight in the fridge. So just do the same wrapping on like a plate or a baking sheet, you'll be good to go. Okay, for the toppings, I'm going to put some green peppers, some red peppers, red onions thinly sliced, some cheddar cheese, this is the medium variety, mozzarella, and for the base, for the sauce, I'm using my favorite Chipotle barbecue sauce, and I really want you to use your favorite sauce. Now, if you really want to, you can even top it with more barbecue sauce in like a crisscross or even like zigzags. For me, that makes it a bit too much because then I don't taste the other toppings that much. But that's always an option, so make this pizza your own. Now, talking about barbecue chicken naanza, we need the chicken. So let's get to the stove. Okay, we're heating a pan here, medium heat, some olive oil. Now the chicken here, just season it with some salt and a bit of pepper. Do the same on the other side. And of course, yeah, as you can see, it's not a regular chicken breast. I've already kind of pounded it thin, about a ½ an inch thick. And that's gonna have a nice and succulent flavor. It's gonna cook faster, and it's gonna be great on this pizza. We're gonna have some nice even dice of the chicken. And now we'll just cook that and sear it until it has a nice golden brown color on each side. Okay, while that's happening, let's talk about what we need actually to make this naanza. I'm gonna make this on the oven. Let's say you are making this with a pre-made naan. In that case, all you have to do is put your toppings on the naan that's already made, and then put that under the broiler and just let that cheese melt. By the time that cheese melts, the naan would have toasted as well. Now what if you don't have an oven and you're using a pre-made naan? You're still in luck. All you gotta do then is put your toppings on the pre-prepared naan, put that on a non-stick pan with a bit of oil or butter, and then cover it. We're covering it so that the steam can melt that cheese and then the pan will toast your naan. Now there's also a way for those folks who don't have an oven, who want to make their naan bread from scratch, and they want to make it on the stovetop. Now that's a bit more involved, and if you want a video on that, I'm gonna be happy to show you. So show me some love for a actual pan made pizza, and I'll be sure to do something on that soon. But for me, I'm using an oven, this dough right here, and what you want to do is preheat your oven at the highest setting that it can go to. I'm doing it at 500, but before you preheat, you want to put some baking steel in your oven. I'm using two, one at the very top, one at the bottom, and having those two surfaces to cook on, it's going to actually turn the oven's temperature even higher, because stones and steels really retain heat really well, and then it radiates it back into the oven. Now it's really screaming and it's sounding incredible. I like it when your chicken is searing just like that. If it's not screaming like that, then your pan is too cold and you're boiling your chicken. Now you gotta agree with me, boiling your chicken for a pizza doesn't seem to be the best way to enjoy it. Now for the other side, I'm just gonna turn down the heat a little bit, because we want to make sure it's cooked completely throughout and not just have color. Now back to the pizza, I'm also going to use the pizza peel. That's going to be useful to actually make the pizza, put it in the oven to start the baking process. And I've also got a metal pizza peel, and that's pretty helpful in actually transferring the pizza between the stones, because it just is a thinner edge, so you can get the pizza on the peel much easier than you can with the wooden peel. Now once the chicken is cooked, just set that aside and let that cool down slightly before you cut it. Now there's a ton of flavor in this pan, and we're gonna capture every bit of that. Here I have 2 cloves of garlic, which is minced. Add that in the pan and make sure that the heat is off at this point, because there's enough heat retained in that pan that you don't need anything more. We're just gonna lightly toast that garlic, a bit of butter, and the rest of that olive oil. Just let that melt. This is truly smelling incredible. Just some nice toasted garlic butter. And I'll tell you why we're doing this. It's gonna be amazing, because the smell is just so good, right? And I'll just put this back, all of this, into a ramekin. You can put a bit more butter so that's more liquidy, which I'm gonna do. Now for those of you who guessed why we just did that, what's better than a nice butter naan? I'll tell you, it's a garlic butter naan. And we have a nice roasted garlic with some roasted nutty butter flavor, and it's gonna really take our naanza, not pizza, to the next level. So our next focus is on the dough, which we are wrapped. So we'll cut that wrapping right open. And if your dough's consistency was perfect, it should just come right off without it sticking to the plastic. Now, before you take this out, sprinkle some semolina or corn flour on your work surface. Then just pick up your dough and put it upside down, and then on the bottom side. Now, press down the center, just degas it a little bit, just enough so you have room for your hands to kind of roll and stretch out the dough. Doing the same thing with a rolling pin, while technically it looks like it works, but it degasses the dough more than it needs to. This is just gives a more natural kind of look to the actual final product. And how do you make that crust? You use the edge of your hands to keep that edge, as I'm doing right now. Now, other ways to stretch: knuckles. We're doing it just like pizza style. Knuckle, stretch. On the edges, knuckle, stretch. knuckle stretch. Another way is literally doing this, kind of tossing it from one hand to the other and literally letting gravity stretch it out. Make sure you cut your nails before doing this, because the nails might mess this up for you. Now it's still kind of thick on the outside. We want the crust, but we don't want it to be too thick and bready on the edges. So another trick, hold it at the seam and literally rotate it. I'm not even stretching. It's stretching by its own accord because the weight, earth, is actually pulling down this dough and telling it, hey, stretch out to the way that you want it to be. Now I'm making this into a circle. Traditionally, naans are oblong. If you want, you can just stretch it out wider than you do in a more vertical fashion, and you'll get that shape as well. Let's do some final stretches to get some evenness across the board. You can get a closer look at how exactly I'm stretching this. Maybe get inspired to make more pizzas. It's so easy to do, and it's always going to be better. Now, let me just move this to the side. On our pizza peel, we'll add a bit of cornmeal. Now spread that out. Anything extra, just let that go off the peel. You just want enough so that this can help slide the pizza into the oven. We don't want it to stick. That's the worst thing that can happen. And if you ever use the peel to transfer pizza into the oven, you know the fear, the adrenaline, and the stress you get when it does get stuck. You have to do all kinds of tricks to get it off so that the entire efforts don't go to waste. Find more info on that on the tip section, and then put the pizza or the naanza right on over here. So for the sauce, I'm using a nice spicy chipotle sauce. Chipotle barbecue sauce, that is. Put that on here. It's about a third cup to a quarter cup, but you can really use extra sauce if you want. It's just like making a pizza at your favorite pizza ordering website, where you can really customize a pizza to your preference. That's what makes pizza so great. There's just so much you can do to make a great pizza that's truly yours. Then add in some mozzarella cheese, then a bit of cheddar. This, as you can see, I've finely grated. I'm just gonna put some dots of it, so it's just like a burst of flavor of cheddar. Now I've not put all of the cheese on top yet. I've reserved some for later. Some green peppers, just sprinkle that around, don't worry too much about it. Then here I have some red peppers. Again, just dot that around, make it artistic. Now, sliced onions everywhere. And that actually reminds me, while we are dressing up our pizza, turn the oven into broil mode. Just dot that around. You can put extra chicken. Again, it's your pizza, so do the toppings as you see fit. Now, important step, every so often, just give it a tug. Make sure it's still moving. Make sure it's not stuck. Now, finish topping with the rest of your cheese. Now you can see how hot that top stone is. Just pull that out lightly just so I can show it to you. You don't have to do this if you're doing this at home and not showing it. Then, in a quick pull and pull motion, and then a quick push and pull motion, put that right in there. Perfect. Now, because of my configuration, the top stone on broil mode, that bottom stone super hot because you've been preheating it for 1 hour at 500. We use this top stone to actually get a nice melt on the cheese, to cook the dough pretty quickly because of that searing hot steel. And once we have the proper amount of color on the top layer, we'll transfer it to the bottom to finish cooking that crust. It's only been about a minute, and you can see how well that dough is rising over there. And don't be afraid to kind of rotate the pizza halfway along the cooking on the top side. Have a look there. look at the bottom. I'm happy with how this looks. So, finish the crust by putting it on the bottom for 30 seconds. And after that is done and you're happy with it, all you have to do is slice it up and serve. Now let's say you want to put some toppings on, like more barbecue sauce or any herbs on top, then slice it first and then put the toppings on, because otherwise you would just mess it up while you slice it. And you better not forget about that garlic butter that we had prepared. And if you're wondering, why should I have this naanza if I could just have a regular pizza? Just trust me when I tell you, that naan dough will give you the best pizza you've never had. Now this looks so good. I'm gonna give a nice little bite of this. Do I have to say anything? Like, just have it. Now, dishes like this, chicken parmesan, mozzarella sticks, fun dishes like this. Now you can serve this as an appetizer, have it as a meal, do both. Just have 2 pizzas. But for more dishes just like this, I have a full playlist for you. Be sure to hit subscribe, get that bell icon so you know when the next video like this comes out, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys.